Oh, wait, baby. Oh, wait, baby. This your boy Big Nate with the Real Underground Radio Station. Oh, wait, baby. This Nate Logic, baby. Hey, man, say, man, look here, man. Listen, good people, listen. Bro, Julie, hey, tonight I got my frat brother, my homeboy, my dog, my partner. Hey, listen, I'm going to keep it all the way a buck. Julian, I'm going to keep it a buck in front of everybody. Me and Julian ain't always got along, but we black men. We both brothers who care about our community. We both brothers who care about our families. We do work for the community. We do things in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our own perspectives and ways. So I'm going to stand, before I go off, before we go into this, Julian, you my dog, irregardless of our past, it's still 100% love for you being, A, a black man, B, a black man in America. I don't care, Republican, Democrat, whatever it is, we still, listen, when you get behind the barrel of one of the police officers who feel a way or racism, systematic racism, whether you believe in it or not, it's still after us. So for our past hiccups and hang-ups, brother, I apologize. Hey, listen, man, I just had to get that out of my system on site, on air, man, because I feel like if I didn't get that out of my system, it was going to go left. I don't want it to go left, man. But listen, this your boy Big Nate with the Real Underground Radio Station. Wait, baby. This Nate Logic, baby. You can apologize now, Julian.
Thank you for having me, man. I accept your apology and true kinship and friendship from one black man to another. I apologize as well for whatever I said that may have offended you. You know, I know we haven't always had, and I think the relationship we had initially started off just from a bad introduction. It was never a phone call that said, hey, what are your core values? What do you stand on your politics? What do I stand on my politics? And it was never that, hey, well, why do you feel this way about your politics? Why do I feel this way about my politics? So a lot of times we as not just black men, just black people in general, if we can set aside our emotions and just bring in the logical aspect of it. Just set the emotions aside and bring in the logical aspects of it. And you learn a lot from each other, just realizing like, wow, you know, people feel a certain way based on the information they've been fed and based on the challenges that they've had to deal with and the cards that have been dealt to them.
I agree with that 100%. And it's unfortunate, but that's just the reality that we have. That's just our reality, man. That's just the way that we've came about and started dealing with things. Instead of us dealing with things appropriately, all we know is to attack. You know,
Correct.
we have created, or this idea has been created in us, that if you don't agree with me, then you must be whatever. Then if you ain't on my side, you wrong and you must die, or you must be canceled, or you must end. And that's unfortunate because that's the same tactic that they've been using since the beginning of time to divide and conquer, because they don't want us on the
Correct.
same bird. They don't want us on the same field, because if we find ways to work through our challenges and get on the same accord, then look our world. And that's just the reality of it. So, I do apologize, and I appreciate your apology as well. But now that we've got that behind us, ladies and gentlemen, listen, I want to introduce you all to a good brother, Mr. Julian Boykin. He got a whole lot of alphabets behind his name. That's all I'm gonna say. Uh, a whole lot. He has about 10 different sets of alphabets behind his name. So you're not gonna find too many people who are as credentialed and studied as Bruh Boykin. So a project manager, board of directors in a lot of different organizations. Basically, a true politician, a true leader of his community. So, without further ado, my people, all in the community of Nate Logic, my dog, my friend, my frat brother, Mr. Julian Boykins. How you doing, brother?
I can't complain, man. Happy to be here. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me.
Man, I'm glad that you able to be here, Julian. Um, First, man, in this climate, man, it's been a tough climate. You agree or disagree? And when I say political climate, it's been some tough times right now, right?
Very, very hostile, very tense moments. Emotions are high right now. I think, I think you go from the last election up until this election, you would normally see tensions going high when it's election season.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go just the last 4 years, the hostility and the tension has never, it's never died down.
Mm.
It's remained steady at an all-time high. It's just been brewing and festering, getting up to this point. Now you take the cap off. Hey, everybody for himself.
Man, look, it seems as if what it is now is scary, to be honest with you. You hear people talking about civil war this and civil war that. I didn't think that was possible, but after some of the things that have transpired, even pre January 6th, I will be honest and say that I'm mindful, and I don't want to say things won't go left, because I feel like at this point they can go left.
They could have went left on the assassination attempt of the president. So I'll give you an example. If it would have came out that the shooter was a Democrat, you would have had a civil war on your hands, where you would have seen Republicans versus Democrats,
You
and
think
you would
so?
have had a lot of people lose their lives.
You think it? You think it would
Oh
have went
yeah,
all the way left?
oh
I
yeah,
think.
because you got motive now.
Mm,
You
yo.
got to think about it. All you need sometimes is just a little. You need a reason to go left,
Mm-hmm.
and to see somebody get that close to President Trump and get off a couple of rounds. The only thing that stopped the Civil War from happening was the fact that they came out and said, "Hey, he's a registered Republican. He donated to a liberal organization." That made Republicans kind of like, "All right, let's hold on. Let's take our finger off the trigger. Let's hold on."
Let's think
Because if
about
it
this,
would have
man.
came out that he was a Democrat, all it would have taken was a far right wing,
Mm-hmm.
podcast, political pundit to say, "Hey, this was a setup. This was an assassination attempt by the Democrats because they sent one of their very own to take out the president." And the only thing you have to go on is, "Oh, well, this person was a registered Democrat." Not to say that he was, but if it would have came out that way, you would have saw a lot of people, man, letting them 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 rounds that they've been stashing and sitting on for the last 10 to 15 years, they would have blew the dust off of them. They would have put them jokers in use.
I don't know, man. I will say this. I personally think a lot of the extremists are locked up from January 6th. I think if those guys would have been out, then they probably would have went left. I don't feel like there are. I think people see the consequences of being an extremist. Like they may talk a good talk, but I don't think they really about that action no more. I think all of them locked up.
I disagree. Mm-hmm. I disagree. You got extremists that have everyday jobs, man. They retired military, they police officers, they nurses, they surgeons, firefighters, you know, average people that may work for the federal government, may work for a Fortune 500 company. You never know.
Yeah,
you never know.
Yeah, they're extremists online, but are they really ready to crash out? I don't think it's none that's ready to crash out. Like the people in January 6th, I don't feel like they were ready to crash out. I feel like they got caught up in an emotional tirade and was just at the, the right moment. I don't feel like none of them was really there they didn't plan on, I ain't gonna say they didn't plan on crashing out. Some did. But I don't feel like all of them went to crash out. I feel like some of them got caught up in the moment.
I'll say this.
They were wrong, though. They were wrong. I will say that.
True. They were wrong. I'll say this. You know how we have that saying growing up in the black community, it's the person that make a lot of noise that you shouldn't pay attention to. It's the quiet ones. Mm-hmm. It's the same way. It's the quiet ones that not on social media. They not drawing a lot of attention to themselves. I call them sleepers because they go unnoticed. They go to work every day. They pay their taxes. They don't cause a lot of drama. They don't bring a lot of attention to themselves. Those are the ones that people do not they take for granted. They walk right by them. Never think twice that they about that life and they can go left. Those are the ones that you got to watch.
I agree with that. So my question then is if there are some out there like that, extremists or whatnot, who do you think is actually radicalizing them? And when I say radicalizing them, I'm thinking in matters sort of like, do you remember High Learning? The character Michael Rappaport played in that? Them guys knew what they were doing. They radicalized that young man. So my question is who's radicalizing these young men? Somebody actually got attached to that young boy who did the shooting there that was staged and radicalized him, I believe, and had him feeling that love. The same thing they do in the little black boy community, in the black community with these little black boys. They be radicalizing them, having them believe that they're loved and basically growing what I call crash dummies.
I believe you have these groups out here. I mean, your federal agencies are aware of them, and they're watching them and they're monitoring them. But you also have these old school radical groups that they stay under the radar. They don't have a social media presence. They're not discussing their stuff on GroupMe or any type of social media networks. They live off of the grid, and they're dispersed all across the United States. And some of them may even be dispersed overseas, but they have a way of communicating to the point where it goes undetected. Just like you have sex trafficking that goes on right in front of our very eyes that we don't even know it, but it happens. It's not happening at night when everybody's asleep. It's happening right now, broad daylight. Folks go to church. You will never know that these people over here are part of a radical organization. You just don't know. And the crazy part about it, man, not everybody needs to join the military to have military training to be a part of these radical groups. The radical groups are teaching people how to survive. They're teaching them how to live off the grid. They're teaching them how to live without technology. And they ready. They're literally ready for war. If you hit the panic button right now, they got their bunkers ready. It's already decked out. They're going to go on the ground. They're going to live for the next 5-10 years without popping up. And you'll never see them again.
Until it's time to go live.
Yes, sir.
That and the sad part about it, the group that is actually radicalizing these people, who actually pushing these people to do these type of horrendous acts, is how do you not say that in good faith that Trump didn't start this type of dangerous rhetoric. Now, I'm not saying both sides don't do it, but I'm saying where it began at. Would you agree with that? It began on the Republican side with Trump.
I'm not gonna say I agree that it began with Trump because you've always had these extremist groups since the '60s. Since you had them when the Klan was very popular. You had them during Jim Crow. So I won't say President Trump is the reasoning behind it, but I will say President Trump re-energized it.
Okay,
I will
that's
say
all. Yeah.
he woke up. He kind of woke up the sleeping giant.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people that's like, well, you're a Republican. I'm like, I'm more conservative than I am a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with MAGA. I don't, I just don't agree with their ideologies and their views and how they do things.
I
I can
think.
say that as a man, as a conservative. Yes, I'm a conservative. I'm a Republican. I'm more of a fiscal Republican. I don't believe in big spending, but I can also disagree as a conservative and say, hey, yes, I am a conservative, but I do not agree with MAGA.
Mhm. And I
But when
think.
I say that, it goes on deaf ears and people don't hear that part.
Well, I think. Well, first of all, being a black Republican, before we get that far into it, that's always a challenge. Am I correct?
From what aspect are you saying it's a challenge from just being a black Republican and being amongst the black community, or just being a black Republican trying to filter my way within the party itself?
I would say both, but I'd like to
Okay.
get your experience, some insight on your experiences as being a black Republican, trying to deal with your own within the black community. How was that experience?
It's kind of a shocker to some people.
Hmm.
So for me, I don't go around boasting and bragging that I'm a member of the Republican Party. So for me, I just look at it from a different perspective. So I'll give you a prime example. I'm a member of 100 Black Men Greater Huntsville. So we just wrapped up a 4 debate series in North Huntsville, and I live in Morgan County, so I don't live in North Huntsville, which is the primarily the black community, the biggest populace of it. So we had what we have school board district 1, school board district 5, city council district 1, city council district 5. So you had Huntsville Alumni Chapter Delta Sigma Theta, you had National Coalition of 100 Black Women, and you had League of Women Voters, along with 100 Black Men.
Hmm.
So I didn't realize it until we had our first committee meeting. I was the only person that had the experience of organizing, planning, and moderating from cradle to grave a political debate, whether it's on a local level or a federal level. So I took it upon myself to educate all the committee members, because my thing is, if I die tomorrow, we still got to carry the torch.
Hmm.
But at least I can do is make sure you educate it and take whatever ingenuity I have or whatever knowledge I have about politics, about the debates, and take it and move forward with it. So I created rules and regulations, sent back to the fellow committee members like, hey, I need a review. Let me know what mistakes I've made so they can be corrected. I created a scorecard so when the audience members come in and they witness these live debates, they have something to grade each candidate so they can determine which candidate best fits them, which candidate best align with their core values. I
Hmm.
also created all of the questions that were asked to the candidates, except those questions that came from the audience during the debates themselves. So my involvement, and that was just me. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to take the focus off of the candidates and put it on the people, the voters, and I wanted to show the voters, hey, come see a sermon. I don't want you to hear about one. I want you to come see one. I want you to see who is campaigning for your vote and why. I want you to be able to put a name with a face when you go vote. I
Right,
want you
right.
to be able to articulate and have some logic behind who you're voting for and why you're voting for that person.
And I think that's noble of you, but I kind of still want to hear you about your journey as far as being a Republican, though. So, are you saying that
So
doing all of that, it didn't come out that you were a Republican, or you didn't have to
no,
say anything about
so
being a
I didn't.
Republican? You did the work.
So my bad. I forgot to finish where I let my work speak for itself and my personality. So therefore, when people got to see Julian Boykin for themselves, and it comes out, okay, he's a Republican. It wasn't an immediate turnoff, or it's like, nah, I ain't dealing with him. It was more so an intimate conversation, like, You're a Republican? Okay, that's what's up. Let me ask you a question. How do you feel about what you see with the current party? How do you feel about, how the party has, the direction of the party? It was more of a welcoming than a shut off, because people got the chance to see me, interact with me, and see how I work, and see that, okay, yes, this young brother is genuine. He doesn't live in North Huntsville, so he's taking time away from his family and giving it to the community and making sure the community is better educated on politics and their core values. So that's the type of welcoming that I've received. It wasn't more so of, no, we're not gonna deal with him because he's a Republican. It was more so of, wait a minute, yeah, he's a Republican, but look what he's doing. He's setting aside his politics and putting it back on people and showing people, hey, I'm a people person. I'm a servant for the people. So I'm literally trying to show people, you have a complaint, you have a concern, you want to vote, but you don't know how to vote and who to vote for. Because one of the biggest issues we have in the Black community, we can sign people up in the Black community to vote, but the problem is you don't give the community a choice. If the incumbent runs unopposed, that's very discouraging to the registered voter that just got signed up to vote. Mm-hmm. So for me, I don't interject my politics. I don't tell nobody, hey, I'm a Republican, this is what I want to do. I'm like, no, I'm Julian Boykin.
So you don't lead with it, and people get to see.
No, I'm not. Because at the end of the day, if you say, hey, I'm Nathaniel Baker, a Democrat, I'm going to remember that. But if you say, hey, I'm Nathaniel Baker, and these are the things I'm working on, then I have a better connection to you. Then it don't matter what your politics are. I don't care.
Because I fell in love with... Right. If you lead with being a Republican, that's going to already put a damper on somebody's ability to open up to see what you can do. I can agree with that, because oftentimes when you first hear about somebody Republican, the first thing, especially if they're black, well, not even just a black Republican. The first thing nowadays, when you hear about somebody being a Republican, the first thing you almost say they're racist.
Correct.
And if they're black, you first thing you say, oh, he must be one of them uncles or whatever. So, how do you deal with it when people do find out that you're a Republican? Have you seen their attitude change towards you?
Not really. Mm-hmm. Once they find out I'm a Republican, and I mean, I've been in this thing for a while. You've seen it. So I've been public enemy number one in our fraternity and amongst the D9. So once, once time starts adding up and people start seeing the receipts, and they're like, wait a minute. Yeah, he may be a Republican, but, the brother's intelligent. The brother can speak. The brother can actually tell you what his core values are and actually identify the issues within the party and bring them to the forefront. The problem I have is, if I'm doing everything that you say I'm not doing, where do we come to a point where it's like, all right, this man is doing exactly what the opposite of what we're saying he's not doing. Oh, he's not calling out his party like we think Senator Tim Scott should. Well, no, Julian been calling out the party since day one, but it goes unheard. It goes unchecked.
Because it's still considered that you... So, well, before we jump all the way in that, because I do want to ask you this. How has things been going within the party dealing, how is things going, the journey within the party? Are they looking at you like the black face? Are they looking at you as just a good servant? How is things for a black man in the Republican Party dealing with other Republicans?
It's been great, man. When my wife and I, we lived in Southern Maryland.
Is your wife a Republican too?
My wife is conservative. So she is what I would probably consider like a blue dog Democrat. So some people don't know, you can be a conservative Democrat and a conservative Republican. Mm-hmm. So you can't have that. So my wife and I, we're a conservative family.
I think, and you know what? Believe it or not, and I truly believe this, most black people are conservatives. You think
correct? We are conservative by nature.
I don't want to say it like that.
LGBTQ.
We're not into that community, the LGBTQ community. That's not anything. The cross dressing, all these things. Black people typically, even abortions. You go tell your grandma you didn't have an abortion, she gonna turn her nose up at you. Or you tell your mama you didn't have an abortion, she gonna say that baby gonna haunt you. So these things are typically frowned upon in our community, but I think it's the other parts of it where things go a little left. But back to where you were saying things as far as you being in the Republican Party and how that has been, and you say that journey has been great.
Yeah, like man, when I lived in Maryland, I was the president for the Young Republicans Southern Maryland chapter, vice president Frederick Douglass Foundation, served on the Maryland Marketing Public Private Partnership Corporation under former Governor Larry Hogan, former treasurer for the Maryland Black Republican Council, former secretary for the Charles County Republican Central Committee. So I was able to partake in a lot of leadership positions just by simply opening my mouth and just saying, "Hey, I want to do this." It's like, all right, okay.
Yeah,
You know, it wasn't no shucking and jiving, none of that. It wasn't no you got to kiss the ring. It's like, no, that young man want to work, let him work. He want to lead, let him lead. You know, I believe I go where I want to go. I've never been somewhere where I felt like I didn't belong. So I've sat at tables. You know, I've been to the White House. I used to go to the White House just about every month, sitting in and meeting congressmen and senators and seeing the different things that go on. And you realize, you know, growing up in Mississippi, you were always taught as black versus white. When I got to Congress, man, on the Hill, it's green. They pretend to be enemies on TV, but they're actually friends, man, behind closed doors. They high five, laugh, all that stuff.
They going out hanging out with each other in the boom boom room in DC, huh? So
Right. They go to Shelley's back porch, which is walking distance from the White House. They go have a cigar, drink some cognac or some scotch. They sit down. You might catch a couple of them in the Republican club, or you go to the Democrat club, and they having a good time.
that's where they meet with the
But
lobbyists,
it's
at,
never
right?
been that. No, 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 no. I was just going on my own
No,
and
I'm
just
saying
like
that's where they meet with the lobbyists at Shelley's
right,
back porch. That's
right,
what I'm
man.
at.
Right, you got lobbyists all over that place, man, lobbying for various different organizations and things of that nature to get things passed in legislation. They need certain things passed on that bill to push that agenda. And I believe at some point, black people, just me speaking for our people, at some point you have to say to yourself, how many people do I vote for that doesn't look like me before I start saying, okay, if I want somebody that's going to respect my concerns and my checklist, my demands, what better person to do it than somebody that looks like me? So, like prime example, I can advocate for LGBTQ, but I can only do that for so long, primarily because I'm not a member of the LGBTQ community. So the things that affect members of LGBTQ don't affect me. That doesn't make me prejudiced towards them or anything like that. It's just that I'm not part of that community, so I'm not directly affected by the things that affect them. But if I have black people that come to me and say, well, Julian, you running for this position, what are you going to do for us? My question to them is, what are your concerns? What are some of the things you would like to see? Then I can sit down, take some notes, and be like, wait a minute. These things that they're asking for, I can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
I can relate to if I want to become a farmer, and the average loan processing time for a black farmer is 355 days. The average loan processing time for a white farmer is what, 30, 35 days?
Mm-hmm.
And that's documented under the $2 billion lawsuit settlement for the black farmers that just got awarded. Because
And that
you had that type of system that was
right.
knowingly and willingly being discriminated against towards African Americans, and that's just a start.
But see, here's my problem though with a lot of things. With, with people being a black Republican, you see the party doing everything they can. Like I think they just sued to stop that lawsuit. With you being a young black boy from Mississippi, and I'm sure you got family members that are farmers or whatever, so you might be directly connected to this. How can you, in good faith, side with this group, knowing that they doing things like that, out, where they pausing and suing for that farm bill? JD Vance came out and said we shouldn't be doing this.
I look at it from both sides. If it's something that's being done on I give an example. Democrats, you see them pushing the LGBTQ agenda and making sure that LGBTQ have equal rights just as the heterosexual community. So you may have a heterosexual black male that say, I don't agree with that. We putting this emphasis and we're allowing LGBTQ to be able to share the same restrooms with our little girls. I don't agree with that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to abandon the party and just jump over to the other side. The same thing goes for the Republican side as well. Yes, I can identify the issues, but me leaving the party and going to the other side doesn't help the situation. That doesn't stop what goes on. That doesn't stop the bigotry and the discrimination and the racism that takes place. It's just like, you and I, we belong in local chapters. If we don't like what's going on in that chapter, do we just say F it and leave? No, at some point you get to the point where you leave, but before you leave, you give an assertive effort to fight and be like, look, this is why I don't believe in this, and this is the effect of if we keep going down this road. Yeah, and I guarantee you, we won't be the only person that agrees with that.
I agree with that, and I see your point, but I think what you done is you kind of made an extremist logic by saying that, hey, of course, no one wants to see grown men in the bathroom with little girls or with women. That's true indeed, but I think you took an extremist point and qualified that to the basic essentials of black men or black farmers having equal access. So I see what you're saying. I just think it's you pulled all the way to the left but you pulled all the way from the left, from the way extreme side of the left, and compared that to the right center point of the right. The center point of the right came out and said that black farmers should not be giving black farmers equal treatment or doing this. How do you do that? I mean, do you?
I just said it. I see what you're saying, but my point is this: if I disagree, which I do, I disagree with what JD Vance said. So my point is this: I'm not gonna say I disagree with and say F it and leave, right, and go to the Democrat Party when there's some things that I don't disagree with.
I agree with that. How many times do you have to see things like that and say, you know what, I can't deal with this anymore? Have you got to that point yet?
No, I haven't gotten to that point yet, because I look at it like this. At some point, you're going to have to pick a side. You can't flip-flop back and forth because you don't like what's going on. Like, you got to, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Granted, you can't die on every hill, but at the same time, you got to fight for something. I'm like, because after a while, you make a name for yourself, and it's like, well, oh, no. Well, don't worry about Julian. He gonna cry and pitch a fit, and then he going to leave. And like after a while, Nikki Haley?
Yeah, kind of like, I feel like what Nikki Haley done is actually flipping. So do you feel like I'd respect the person more for what you're doing? How, you know what, that's kind of messed up what they're doing. I don't agree with it, and standing on that than compared to when she was running for president through the primaries. Hey, if this man wins office, he's gonna be this. He's gonna be the worst pick ever. We're not gonna win with him, and done all these different things, and then allowed the verbal disrespecting her husband and his service, all these things. Now, I understand where it's politics and when people are running, but I can't respect someone who allows them to disrespect their mate. Same concept with Senator Ted Cruz, how he let that man talk bad about his wife.
Correct. Politics has changed. Politics has changed. I remember growing up, it was, you can disrespect the candidate, but family is off limits. Women, children, 100% off limits. So we've gotten to a point now where the gloves have came off and nobody is in a safe zone. I understand the political thing of it when I see candidates that'll say things about another candidate. Next thing you know, they come to an alliance. That's by design, because at the end of the day, they're going to do what they believe is best for the party. It's like, hey, we're trying to win. So we need you to get on board, whether you like it or not. And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes.
Yeah. And how, though? I think I would rather, me personally, once you dig a little deep and get to talking about my old lady, man. It's tough, man. I don't think I could do it, man. I don't think I could ride with someone who disrespected my family member. Do you think that at the rate we're going right now, do you think things will ever be able to uh, get better?
Get better how?
Do you think
Because
that
that's a broad question. So
do
get
you,
better from the stance of what? Bridging the wealth gap?
well, the wealth gap is going to be what it's going to be, and that I think is going to take a lot. But I'm talking about as far as our community, how far it's segmented, and not just black community, but the Republicans and the Democrats. Do you think that after this election, or anytime near soon, that we'll be able to start working together and get through all this?
The only way to get to your question, I believe it can happen, but you're going to have to implement term limits and you're going to have to outvote the old guard. So when you see people like Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Lindsey Graham, James Clyburn, Nancy, Maxine Waters, when you look at those
Mitch
individuals, they got
McConnell
30 plus
look like you.
years. Yeah,
Ted Cruz look like you ain't mentioned none
right.
of your Republican partners.
I did say Mitch McConnell. I didn't say Ted Cruz, but when I look at all of the old heads, all of those old heads that got 30 plus years on both sides, regardless if they Democrat or Republican, and I'm fair. I'm a fair and reasonable guy. I'm equal opportunity. I'm not going to sit there and just take jabs at the Democrats. I'm going to call out everybody. When I see people that got 20, 30 years in office, I'm like, hey man, it's time for you to come out. If you was in office when you had to pull your tag down to put gas in it, it's time for you to come out. If you had a bell bottom, you had an afro, you had a jerry curl, it's time to come out of office. Yeah. I'm like, we need fresh blood with new ideas. I wholeheartedly agree. Term limits. I believe for U.S. Senate, you should serve one term. That's 6 years. For the House, make it equivalent. You get 3 terms.
I don't know.
3 terms. Because Congress only serves 2 years.
Yeah. So
Congress only serves 2 years. So 3 terms is good enough because it allows you to, one, fix what was done from the last administration during your first term. And year 2, it allows you to implement the things that you campaigned on. And term 3, it allows you to execute. So you're at least given a fair and a reasonable amount of time to be able to deliver on the promises that you made to your constituents that help you get in office.
So you think 6 years? I'm gonna be honest with you. I can see how that would work, but I think the challenge with that would be is finding people who want to put a pause on a career. So if I was in, how would you get a young servant to come in? Say, for instance, somebody who maybe 10, 20 years within their career, or 10, however many years, and then you just telling them, hey, 6 years, put a pause on service, and then what do they do after that, after they met their term limits?
So I'm going to take it to the state level. So state of Virginia, for example, you can serve as a governor multiple times. You just can't do it consecutively.
Okay.
So the current governor, Governor Glenn Youngkin, he's about to finish his term. He has to come out whether he like it or not. Okay. And they have another election. Whoever gets elected, they serve 4 years. If Governor Youngkin wants to come back and run again for governor, he can do so. He just can't serve consecutive terms.
Okay, I can dig it. So what is your opinion on some of these other very vocal black Republicans like Brian Donaldson, Candace Owens, and what are your thoughts on some of these? Tim Scott.
I've met all of them. I don't have nothing bad to say about him. Matter of fact, I helped Congressman Byron Donalds get elected because I did an interview on him with my podcast when he was campaigning for Congress. Senator Tim Scott, great guy. The only issue is, excuse me, like I tell people, Senator Tim Scott is one black Republican in the room by himself. So on one aspect, black folks will say, well, he does not speak up for us. And I said, you're right, I agree. I said, but my rebuttal is, where is the support? It's like, what do you mean? I said, so you just want him to call out the hypocrisy? Yeah. I said, okay, so what's the return on investment for that? I said, if I cheat on my wife and she says, I'm gonna leave you, and she never does, at some point, what she says to me falls on deaf ears. I'm going to keep cheating because I know she's not going anywhere. I said, so what is the return on investment if Senator Tim Scott puts his senatorship on the line and calls out the hypocrisy within the Republican Party, but he has no support? It's no different than you and I in frat meeting. If we make a motion and there's nobody to second that motion, where's the support? If we've identified a problem and we come up with a solution and we make a motion, but there is no support, at some point we got to say to ourselves, like, okay, what do you want the man to do? Do you want him to get voted out and not serve, and we have no African-American representation in the U.S. Senate? Or do you want him to call out the hypocrisy and there is support? And most black people don't look at it like that until they're like, dang, I ain't never thought about it like that. I said, exactly. I said, all y'all want him to do is call out the hypocrisy, which I agree. But where is the support? If he calls out the hypocrisy, what is the next step? So what's the next step if he calls out the hypocrisy?
So and I definitely agree with that and understand your point. But my question is, what is the investment worth if you in the room if you're not doing anything?
Define doing something. Because if you call out the hypocrisy and there is no agenda, there is no, okay, here's the action, what's the reaction? Okay, the action is let's call out the hypocrisy. So what's next? Once you've called out the hypocrisy, what is the action plan on fixing the issues that you have addressed? That's what I'm talking about, the support. That's where we get the support, and that's what I mean. Okay.
So what if you're in the room? He's in the room, right? We can say that, right?
Right.
What has been the investment of him being in that room? What can we say? What policy directive? What has he led being the only black male senator in the room? How can we say that is of value to us?
That I do not know, and that's a very valid question. What
if you're not going to do
policies?
What's the use of being in the room? He served more purpose by being the black face, the black lackey of the other side than he has being the black face in the room. I would agree with you if you were saying
that goes back to my point I just made. That goes back to my point I just made.
I agree.
Wait a minute, Nate. Listen to me. You just said something that we're both saying the same thing. We just coming from different ends of the perspective of the spectrum. Right. You're saying, what's the point of being in the room if you're not going to call out the hypocrisy? I'm saying, what's the point of calling out the hypocrisy if you do not have support? So if he calls out the hypocrisy, he's identified a problem, he's came up with solutions, but he does not get the backing to implement those solutions, to attack those problems. How do you get mad at him? Now, I will agree. You have to first address the problems.
So you're in the room now, right? He's in the room.
You have. Okay.
I agree. He's in the room, right? So with him being in the room,
right? He's in the room.
Seen anything done? Now we can say the First Step Act.
No,
you don't think so about that. You don't want to give him that, which I don't give him. But all right,
I would give him that. But when I look at real issues that need to be addressed with our black men or black people in general getting harsh sentences for misdemeanor crimes, things of that nature, that should be addressed when you have black entrepreneurs who are not given opportunities, not guaranteed things, just the opportunity to be able to apply for the programs for small business owners, apply for the programs to be able to have a piece of the American dream, home ownership, entrepreneurship, things of that nature, so we can be given the chance of starting generational wealth, being able to start a trust, put a home in a trust, put our insurance policies in a trust. So when in the event of my death, the trust is the beneficiary, and we start that generational wealth that Caucasians have been doing for so many years, that now African Americans are just now starting to catch on to, due to the help of social media, being able to expose that and broadcast that so much on for free. So I truly go ahead. I'm sorry.
Tim Scott should have been championing these things, right? But has
it? If what you're saying falls on deaf ears, at what point is it not effective? If I call out the problems and I have the solutions, you and I both know what happens in our frat meetings when we identify a problem and we come up with a solution. And we say, I make a motion and nobody seconds that motion. Does that mean do I have support or not? If I make a motion and you don't second it, do I have support? Yes or no?
You don't have any support. You don't have any support.
Okay, so when you look at,
let me ask you this though. So
go ahead.
When you find out that you don't have any support, at what point do you hold yourself accountable and say, hey, I might need to go back to the drawing board because I don't have the support of my community? And then do some deep digging to find out why you don't have that support. I don't feel, Tim, do you feel that Tim has done that deep digging? Do you feel that Tim has done that reaching out to the black community? And not only Tim, Byron, any black conservative that's in leadership now, do you feel like they've done enough to go back and pull at that community outside of just chastising the community or pandering towards the white community?
So let me explain something to you. The support does not come from the black community. When I say support, I'm talking from fellow senators. That's where the support comes from. So when he implements certain things that he wants to make a motion and he needs the support, I'm talking about the support that comes from fellow U.S. senators like himself. That's what I mean by support. I'm not talking about support from the black community. I'm talking about when he is in session and he is calling out the hypocrisy. He has to get support from his fellow senators. If he does not get that support, his cries fall on deaf ears. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the support from the black community. I'm talking about when he is in session and he is identifying certain things when he has when he has the floor and the chairman has given him not the gavel but given him permission. Senator Scott, you have the floor. Go ahead.
So let me ask
when he does all of that, when he does all of that and no other U.S. senator backs him, that is what I mean by support. If he doesn't get that support, how can he implement the solutions to the problems that he has identified, especially those that affect African Americans? That's what I'm talking about.
Is he a part of the Black Caucus?
I don't know. I would assume so.
That might be.
That I can't answer that question. I do not know.
So I think that's where these are some of the things that if you walk in the room and ain't nobody got your back, you gotta wonder why they ain't got your back. Because you've been out here pandering to these folks instead of all this. But never mind that, because I want to move on to the next topic that I wanted to talk to you about.
One more thing before you move on.
Okay.
He has to go to fellow U.S. senators like himself and get the support. If he can't get no support on that, nothing happens.
Agreed. So he need to be able to sit at the table with a Cory Booker or, things like, even with the VP, he need to be able to sit at the table because she's a deciding vote. So,
right. So even if he can't get the support from the Republican side, he sits with fellow senators that are Democrats and say, hey, these are the issues. These are my concerns. These are my solutions. Do you agree? What changes what modifications can we make? Will you support me on that? Again, the key, bipartisanship. I truly believe change happens from both sides of the table, not just one side. So if he can't get support from his fellow Republicans, he is more than obligated, and I assume should be willing to go across the table and say, hey, these are the issues that I'm trying to advocate for. Will you back me? Will you support me?
I agree with that. So let me ask you this, man. What, we've been watching a lot of these discussions and a lot of the VP running, VP Harris and Kamala Harris doing her thing, Tim Walz doing his thing, JD, all these people out here doing these things. I want to get your thoughts on policy from the Republican side. Which specific policy that Trump is putting out there that you think would actually be beneficial to the community, that makes you feel comfortable to say, hey, we need to ride with him because of this specific policy?
That's a good question because I don't know. I haven't paid attention to it. I haven't paid attention to either side. I'm like, you have some people that they have their mind made up. They're gonna vote for who they're gonna vote for. Me, I'm more so on the fence of let me hear what both sides have to offer.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing about policies and campaigning, they always change.
So
No,
you don't
nobody
feel like
sticks with the same policy.
so. Let me ask you this then. All right, how do you feel about inflation? What is the cause of inflation? Like, is it corporate greed? Is it, what are these different things that are adding to inflation?
Before I answer that question, let me go back. President Trump made a policy where he wants to not tax like your service workers and your waiters, waitresses, and things of that nature. I believe that is good, but I believe you have to have policies when you're looking at different classes. You have middle class, you have wealthy class. So I need to look at all of his policies and see how they benefit the middle class. My wife and I, we identify as a middle class. We fall into the category of middle class, Americans. When I look at Vice President Kamala Harris, she wants to implement $25,000 towards purchasing a home. My question is, what is the income cap on that? Because there's not going to be open to everybody. So what's the income? What are the income stipulations on that? And how do African Americans go about benefiting from that? How much income does the average African American household need to have in order to qualify for that? So those two things stand out to me the most that resonate with me. So when it relates to inflation, inflation is something I don't agree with. However, we kind of did it to ourselves. So when the federal government was saying, "Hey, we need to stop spending so much money. We need to stop spending so much money," the American people didn't listen. So the feds, the feds, they went ahead and said, all right, let's raise the rates in hopes of causing fear in the American people. Say, wait a minute, they're raising rates, let's stop spending money. But it did a total opposite. It made Americans spend more money as a way of standing up to the bully to say, hey, I'm not going to be intimidated by your inflation rates. Now we've gotten to a point where inflation has gotten so high, it's caused both sides to say, okay, we need to stop. Consumers, we need to stop consuming so much. We need to stop spending so much money. The Fed, we need to come down on the interest rates.
I think one of the challenges behind the problem with corporate greed is once they found out that you was willing to pay $10 for a box of cereal, they weren't gonna go back down on their price. And it's basic business. It's basic business.
Right. So you have a problem now with houses. You have people literally, knowingly, and willingly paying above asking price for a house. So if the house was $275,000, you had a bidding war. If you got it for $400,000, guess what? When it comes time for you to sell that home and you get an appraisal, you're upside down.
Right.
And there's no way you're going to get what you paid for the house just because you bought it in a time period where interest rates were very low and people were in a bidding war for just about all houses. Well, so it was very rare that a client got the asking price. It was always, okay, somebody came in at an extra 50, 100K. And now you just.
The problem is, though, Julian, I think the problem is that that's when the government, unfortunately, and the people don't like to hear this, some of those socialist type of ideas and ways is that they're going to have to cap some stuff. So a part of the problem with the housing market is the low, not demand, but the low availability. There's not that many houses. Supply. So the low supply of houses. And so what's happening is these businesses are coming in. For instance, let's use Atlanta. A lot of these big businesses are coming in and buying up houses and putting them, and not only even big businesses, small homeowners. You might have an extra house. You might take that extra house and instead of renting it out, you might put it on an Airbnb. There were people who were coming in renting out apartments in Atlanta. Instead of renting out this apartment for you to live in, you'll put it on an Airbnb. All these things took away from the supply. And as basic business 101 is supply versus demand, right? So the supply is drying up because people out here trying to make money and capitalize. And until the government puts some type of controlling mechanism on corporate homeowners, on all these different things, it's gonna be tough.
So you in Atlanta, like Loganville, Georgia, Snellville area. My wife and I, we have family out in the area. We saw brand new subdivisions coming up, but they were not for sale. They were for rent only, not rent to own, just rent. So, like in the Huntsville, Alabama area, you have, like you said, you have a short supply of houses. They're not being built fast enough. So the alternative is we're going to build apartments. So you have apartments popping up all over Huntsville, Madison County area. The downside to that is when you get too many apartments, it affects the property value of your home because you don't have no comps to compare. And it makes it hard to give a true assessment of what your property is worth. So, I mean, you're absolutely right. The Fed's got to put a clamp on it, but it's almost like you've done it to yourself at the same time. Yeah, I want to stop you, but I can't stop you because I threaten you with interest rates and in a fear of hoping you will stop spending money. You kept spending more money as I continue to raise the rates. So now we're at a point now where we passed the point of no return. I can't drop the rates drastically as I raise them in order to get you to spend more money just because we've implemented a fear factor for people to be like, nah, you dropped the rates during COVID to get me to spend money. I spent my money. Now you done jack the rates up. There's no way for you to come down. Like you look at car loans. The average car loan now is what, 84 months?
So
10 years ago, that wasn't a normal.
Right, agreed. So, yeah, the average loan now is 84, 72 months. Let me ask you a question, though, Julian. Who do you trust enough to say they're going to fix it? Do you trust Trump's plan? Or do you think, because he's shown you what he can do in 4 years, right? He's shown you what he can do in 4 years already. Do you think he is capable of fixing this problem?
I don't think anybody is capable of fixing it, no matter who you have in office, because the president can only do so much. The president can't come in and say, hey, we're going to fix the problem. It takes money to fix it. So where's the money going to come from? Mm-hmm. If eggs cost $10 for a dozen, what are you going to do to fix it? You're going to drop the price of eggs? You got too many companies profiting off of the inflation. So you're not going to drop these prices just so it can benefit the consumer to say, hey, I'm going to drop these prices. Well, if you do it, the consumer is going to take that money and probably get caught up on bills, or they're going to spend the money somewhere else. So it doesn't matter if we have Vice President Harris in office or if you put President Trump back in office, because you can't control what the consumer does with his or her money. Well, that's the problem. You can't control it.
This is where I kind of do disagree with you here, because I think that $25,000 that she is offering to give homeowners a first time, I don't know the specifics. I think it may be for first time homeowners. That's going to help a lot with the supply. I mean, with the demand. So that's going to help a lot with the demand. You don't think so?
Not necessarily, because how does $25,000 help you if your interest rate is 7%?
Yeah, that's what they're going to have.
So
it's going to have to. So it's a complex problem, because not only is she going to have to get that $25,000, she's going to have to also see if she can persuade the Fed to drop that rate.
Right. So if you look 2021, I think my wife and I, we were looking for a home. I think we had locked in like 2.8%, 3% interest. Mm-hmm. Fast forward 3 years, that rate is double. So it doesn't matter if you give me $100,000 to buy a home, if my interest rate is still 7.5%, not to mention that banks are going to tack on 1 to 2% just so they can make a profit.
Right.
Just so that, I call it pass through. I'm going to give you this mortgage, but let me pass on a little extra interest so I can make some money off the top.
Yeah, and you got to.
So
make that
how does a $25,000 grant help you if the interest rate is so high to where you can't even afford the mortgage? Because keep in mind, you got to carry a PMI. That PMI stays on for 7 years. That can be an extra $300 to $500 a month on top of your mortgage.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think these are the type of conversations that I like to have, that I think are important for us to have, where we discuss and look at different policies, from these different candidates to see how it will affect our community. Like I said in the beginning, man, we can go back and forth all day and down each other. I don't gain anything out of making this a shouting match. I do gain by getting insight from your perspective. And so for that, I'm grateful. What I'm gonna do now, Julian, I'm gonna give you some time to to speak to the people, speak to the audience, and let them know where they can follow you at, your opinion. I like to shut my mouth up. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And but before I do that, let me let everybody know this your boy Big Nate. This Nate Logic, this the real underground radio station. I'm on here live with the politician, Julian Boykin. Julian, go ahead, brother. Speak your piece. I'm going to mute my mic, shut my mouth, and let you say your piece.
Thank you for the opportunity, man. Those of you who want to follow me, you can follow me on all social media platforms, Julian Boykin. That's Julian, B as in boy, Oykin. I also have a podcast called Political Talks with JB, where I interview people running for office. It does not matter if you're, Republican, Democrat, Independent. My whole message, I started this during COVID. It was just to figure out a way to get a message to the people and implement technology from the standpoint of door knocking is not effective as it used to be. It doesn't matter if it's from the Republican side or the Democrat side. Technology has taken over. Texting, text banking is the new way of door knocking. So people are more inclined to talk to a stranger from their phone than they are of opening the door. So for me, I interview people running for office. Anybody need to get in contact with me? Somebody that's running for office. I do not charge. Again, I do not charge. This is strictly me just doing this from a passion for politics, which is something I never knew I had until God threw me in there. So you can reach me 256-701-0464, 256-701-0464. Again, thank you for the opportunity, man. I look forward to the next one. If you got time, man, let's do another one. We can hash out the policies. We can pull up what Trump's policies are, what Kamala's policies are, and we go at it. I will say this. Everybody said they're going to vote for Kamala, and they were like, "Are you doing?" I'm like, "No, I'm not. I don't know who I'm going to vote for." I said, before I just make a decision, I want to compare and contrast and see which candidate is offering, their policy, so you can have something to compare. If you're just going to vote for somebody already without knowing what they're going to advocate for and what their policies are, I'm like, you might want to wait. There's nothing wrong with it, but just before you make that decision, before you just jump, okay, I'm going to go with this quote because it's the cheapest quote, ask that individual, okay, you got another quote over here. See what they're offering and what's included in that price. See what the Democrats have to offer. See what the Republicans have to offer. And then compare both sides and look at your core values and see which candidate best aligns with your core values. And that's what I believe in. I'll never tell somebody, go vote for Trump. I'll never tell somebody, go vote for a Democrat. I'll tell them, hey, I don't know what your core values are. I don't know your lifestyle. I don't know your family dynamics, your income. I don't know how you're affected by certain policies and legislation. But what I do know is I can help you identify your core values. And from there, you can make a better informed decision based on which candidate best aligns with your core values.
And I can appreciate that, and I think that's a great way to look at it. But I really want to ask this then. How can a person in good faith agree with almost anything Trump is? I mean, listen to the things he's saying, the way he's carrying himself. I truly understand, you got to ride with the one you came with, but in good faith, how can a black person listen to the way he's talked about other black people, the way he's talked about other people, the people that are siding with him? Like, there's not one racist in America who don't agree with Trump. Not one racist in America. So you find me a card carrying member who ain't a Trump fan, I'd be super surprised. How can you, in good faith, ride with him?
I'm not a fan per se. My thing is this: I support whoever's in office. I didn't like President Joe Biden, but I'm like, hey, if you don't respect the individual, respect the title. Yeah. That's my thing. If you don't like the individual, respect the title. At the end of the day, you have to pick a side. I don't agree with President Trump being the nominee. I don't agree with Vice President Harris being the nominee. I believe we need fresh blood with new ideas. However, the American people have voted, so here we are.
Well, I can
If
respect
you
that.
don't
I can
vote,
respect that.
you can't voice your opinion. So
Right.
I can't sit there and say, well, I don't like President Trump, so I ain't gonna vote. Well, that's a vote for Vice President Harris. I don't like Vice President Harris, I'm not gonna vote. That's a vote for President Trump.
Yeah.
So at some point, people have to set aside their personal reasons and just go back to what I call the core political basics. What are your core values? Which candidate best aligned with your core values? Do I agree with President Trump on everything? No, I don't. But I believe at some point, as a fellow Republican, we gotta break away from this MAGA movement, and we gotta get back to politics where it's people before politics, and not the other way around. Like we've, in the beginning, it was the nice little MAGA movement, the chant. I'm like, but I believe the Republican Party let themselves get caught up in the moment. And now the MAGA movement has taken the party so far to the right to where you have, old school conservatives that don't agree with it. They don't agree with it.
Yep.
Right. You don't agree with it, but at the end of the day, you have to have self-accountability and say, you know what, this is our fault. We allowed this to happen. Mm-hmm. How do we address it? The problem is the Republican Party can't break away from President Trump. It's primarily because he still has the donor list. That donor list is golden. That's the answers to the test.
And
so until they
break away from them,
the problem is you need the donors list. If the party does not get the list, you at the mercy of Trump. That's just facts, and that's the key. That's the stronghold. So when people ask why don't the Republicans Party stand up to Trump, they can't. They don't have the donor list. If they have the donor list, they can take that and say, all right, man, we're gonna part ways with you. But as long as he has the donors list, it's hard to break away.
If he loses, hopefully so, where do you think that will take the Republican? Will the Republican Party say, okay, but he out of here, he can't run again in another 4 years? If he loses, where do you think that leads us?
I believe at some point there has to be a plan. On one aspect, you have some conservatives that say, hey, they would rather see the Democrats win this one so the MAGA movement can go ahead and move forward and just die. Because President Trump is up in age, so coming back 4 years from now, you don't know what happens to a person when they're 75 and older. 4 years is a drastic change in a person's health.
Oh, it's over.
But I believe
he don't win this one, he's going to jail.
So I believe you got to get to a point to where you have to, just wipe your hands away from it and say, look, we have to go back and we have to regroup. And I believe this is a prime opportunity for African Americans, those that identify as conservative or identify with the Republican Party, to jump in, not be afraid to take lead. It's okay to support and door knock and help other candidates. But I'm like, at some point, you got to get off the bench and say, okay, I've seen everything that goes on. I have some suggestions, put me in the game. At some point, the party has to do a reset. It has to do a reset, a total reset. Not just, we just going to do a soft reset. No, you got to do a hard reset, and you got to come back to the drawing table, and you got to say, okay, we done rode this wave for like 8 years. We can't ride it no more.
Yeah,
because if you keep riding it, it's like the Titanic. You're gonna go down with the ship.
Yeah, and after him, I don't see anyone I don't see nobody after Trump. He didn't develop a leader to come after him. So I think the Republican Party has to do a hard reset after this is over with. Whether Trump wins or not, right? They got to do a hard reset because people aren't going to fall in line with J.D. Vance. So what's the future of the Republican Party? It has to be, like you said, it has to be young. This is an opportunity for young brothers such as yourself, other leaders. I don't think they'll fall behind Tim Scott. I don't think they'll fall behind Byron Daniel or Donaldson or whatever his name is. I think it's going to be a hard reach in where young Republicans who didn't become MAGA extremists to do their thing and get out here and lead. So, Julian, man, I don't want to hold you any much longer, brother. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Well, I'll tell you what, before we go, I wanted to ask you this, and I want to get your opinions on voter apathy. How do we get black people off the couch, whether it's on the Republican side, whether it's on the Democratic side? How do we get people in our community engaged? And I want to know from a Republican perspective and from a conservative perspective. Let me say that.
If it is the end, it must begin with you. If it is the end, it must begin with you. I can't force you to see value in voting. I can't force you to see value in being an asset to the United States, whether it's you have a job or you own a business. So you got to provide service, or you're in sales or you work for somebody. And I translate that to voting, because you have to be an asset to this country. And that's the way the country was designed. You know, you're born, you crawl, you walk, you go to school, you decide if you want to go to college, military, you become an asset. And people have to see value in voting. People have to, black people have to see value in voting and understand the history behind voting as it relates to black people. You know, the Voting Rights Act was something that was created specifically for black people to give them fair and equal rights to be able to vote. I I believe that the last 20, 30 years, a lot of our parents kind of failed us from the aspect of we put more emphasis on athletics. I want to get my child into college and get this D1 scholarship and go pro. But we neglected the fact that we didn't want to go to the city council meetings. We didn't want to go to the central committee meetings. So like when I go to my board of directors meeting, when I go to my local central committee meetings, when I go to Republican events and things of that nature, a lot of times LJ, my son, is with me, because I know, yes, he's 4, but at some point he's gonna stop playing and he's gonna sit down and he's gonna listen, because he's at an age to where he got a listening ear. And all we have to do is expose our kids. If we take half of the energy that we put in our kids when it comes to athletics and implement some politics, now our kids can have a better future, a better understanding of how politics works and how this world is centered around politics. How, prime example, most folks don't know your city councilman is the one that affects your taxes on your home. They can raise the taxes on your home. So when we get our kids involved in politics, they have a better understanding of how the world operates and how everything is centered on voting. If you don't like your school system, you have to elect a school superintendent. If you don't like how your neighborhood is not well lit, that falls on your city councilman or city councilwoman. If you don't like the roads in your area, hey, I want better paved roads. I need to go talk to my city councilman. I need to figure out, hey, these are my concerns. What are you going to do about it? If you don't like the current person in office, you vote them out of office. If you can't find somebody to implement the things that you want, you as an individual, it should be an obligation to you and your community and this country, run for office. I believe every black person, if they have the opportunity and the time and the ingenuity and the passion, run for office, because that is where change happens. Granted, you can vote, you can vote and bring up these issues, but at some point, people stop listening to you when you bring up the issues and you bring up the problems and you come up with the solution, but you don't want to be the solution. I can come up with solutions all day. At some point, I know myself. I'm like, all right, Julian, people like you. They listening to you. They like what you're saying. But at some point, you're going to have to get off that bench and you're going to have to get in the game. At some point, we got to get to that point, and that's part of voting. You got to get in the game and you got to vote, but you have to vote the right election.
Medicaid, healthcare.gov is here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree.
National elections is not for black people. Local elections is for black people. City councilman, state alderman, mayor, lieutenant governor, governor, Congress, U.S. Senate. Those are one man, one vote, one woman, one vote. There's no electoral college in state elections, local elections. That is where change happens. So if black people want to, how can you energize black people? Well, first and foremost, you got to see if the incumbent is going to have a challenger. If the incumbent runs unopposed, you're not going to get black people enthused about voting because they're going to complain about the very thing that they've complained about.
Yep.
Same old. Oh, man, Big Nate been in office for the last 25 years.
Ain't did
why do I need to vote? Why do I need to vote if you don't give me options to choose from? If you're going to give me the same person over and over again, why do I need to be a registered voter? My vote does not count.
Wait, baby.
I mean,
hey, man, Julian, you dropped some jewels. That's true. I feel what you're saying. But listen, man, we've been on here an hour and almost 20 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and let us get out of here, Julian, man. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. This your boy, Big Nate, with the Real Underground Radio Station. This Nate Logic, baby. My brother, Julian Boykin, man, with the... hey, Julian, how many different sets of alphabets do you have behind your name? Yeah, PMP, CMB, CBS, ABC, NBC. How many is it, Julian? You are a credentialed brother, man.
MBA, Masters of Business Administration, MS, Masters of Science, PMP, that's a project management certification. CISM is a certification in information security manager.
Jesus
cybersecurity.
Christ. Oh, man. The boy just, he ain't just wearing no bow tie because he think it's cool. He wearing a bow tie because he's smart. Hey, man, Julian, right. I appreciate you for coming on here, man, so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. We'll definitely have to run this back. I'll get some other brothers, man, who got some insight and can give us some game and thoughts about this same thing. Maybe from the other side. I ain't going to never tell nobody. Listen, I don't never want nobody to think I know what I be talking about because I really don't. I just got a good idea stuff. So I appreciate you, man, for coming on here, man. I really did enjoy this, Julian. Hey, listen, this your boy, Big Nate. This Nate Logic, man. Listen, Julian, hold on 1 second for me. Hey, I want y'all to understand, man. Get registered, get engaged, go vote, find out this information so you'll know how to take place, so you know what's going on in your community. It is your obligation. I seen something today that said, in honor of our ancestors who were beat and dragged and killed and all these horrible things, if you don't vote for them, and we ain't talking about 10, 15 years, 10 or 15 generations ago, whatever. We talking about your grandma now. They beat on your grandma because she wanted to go vote. And now you got your sick, sorry, lazy ass on the couch. Get your stupid, lazy dog ass up and go vote. And you got a problem with me telling you, I don't care. I hope your grandma come whoop you when you sleep. I hope your pawpaw put you out of his house. I hope something bad to happen to you for not voting. Get engaged. You have an obligation to be doing your civic duty. You wondering why you on your third tire busting because they ain't fixed the streets. Well, they ain't gonna fix the streets because you didn't vote. The people that in the office don't care about fixing the streets. They not gonna fix the streets because they ain't got no money. They ain't got no money because you ain't voted. So get engaged. You kid ain't got nowhere to go after school. There ain't no street lights in your neighborhood because they ain't got no money because you ain't vote. It's your fault. Get outside. Go do your civic duty, baby. This your boy Big Nate with the Real Underground Radio Station, baby. Listen, I just want you to do what you're supposed to do, baby. I just want you to do what you're supposed to do. That's it. I want you to know. I don't mean you no harm, baby. I just need you to see it through, baby. Oh! To you I give the glory. On my knees I fall. Julian, man, we finna get out of here, baby. Oh, wait, baby. This the Real Underground Radio Station. This Nate Logic. Oh. Oh, wait, baby. I have the wisdom and understanding. Listen to the OJs, baby. Oh, wait. Julian, I appreciate you for tuning in with the Real Underground Radio Station. Hey, follow my brother Julian Boykin on all platforms. JB's podcast. Am I correct?
Political Talks with JB.
Political Talks with JB. Tap in with us, baby.